You're watching the Flourishing Introvert Show. If you're an introvert with more to offer and are looking for ways to play to your strengths authentically, you're in the right place. With up to 50% of any population identifying as an introvert, if you're not one, you'll know one, but you may not understand what makes them tick. Watching this show will help you to build that understanding and consequently build better business and personal relationships. Many people don't find out until their mid-years that what makes them different is their introversion. So this show is also for you if you're curious about becoming the best version of yourself. Let's get started. Hello and welcome. Come on in. It's good to see you. And for those of you who haven't joined me before, I'm Joanna Rawbone, the founder of Flourishing Introverts. And today I'm going to explore something that I've really become, I suppose, to realize that is essential to flourishing. And it's this ability to ride the peaks and valleys of life. So my big mission in life is to shift this bias towards extroversion, towards the extrovert ideal that seems to be everywhere in society, in business, in all walks of life, really, so that people can own their introversion with confidence, pride, and a lived experience of equity. And we're definitely a long way from that right now. If you've joined my show before or been watching it for any length of time, you'll know that one of my favorite definitions of flourishing comes from the positive psychologist, Dr. Lynn Sutz. And she says, and I still have to read this sometimes to get it in order, so forgive me for a moment. Flourishing is the product of the pursuit and engagement of an authentic life. There's some key bits right there. The pursuit and engagement of an authentic life that brings inner joy and happiness through meeting goals, being connected with life's passions, and relishing in the accomplishments through the peaks and valleys of life. And that's really why I want to focus on that right now, because of all the things I love about that definition, the peaks and valleys are what we all experience in life. You know, no one said this was going to be easy. So I think for me, it's about how I choose to ride those peaks and valleys rather than feel at their mercy. I've been on this earth long enough to realize that victimhood is not a great place to be. And I know that, you know, some people's valleys have been far darker and deeper than mine. And we make choices in life about how we deal with some of those things. I have a little card that's framed on my wall, which is a quote from Hunter S. Thompson. Some of you may have seen it before. And it reads this: "Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, 'Wow, what a ride.'" The older I'm getting, the more I've given up on the well-preserved body, but the more I'm really wanting to skid in broadside. So much so that even though I'm more of a kinesthetic than visual person, I can both feel and see the image of me doing just that. Now, in order to achieve that desire to skid in broadside, I believe I need to learn how to ride those peaks and valleys. Like a BMXer or a motorcycle scrambler or a rallycross driver, come to that. My husband always said that I'd make a good rallycross driver. I'm not sure what that says about my driving, but it's secretly something I always wanted to do too. So there's something about enjoying the journey, even the spills and thrills and the variety that life throws at us, rather than trying to avoid it. And for me, that's certainly what matters right now, is to somehow throw myself into the experience of life, experience all of it, rather than keeping myself safe from it. But you see, there's the paradox, because apparently, and I see this all the time on social media in the introvert groups I'm part of, I keep seeing that introverts want a quiet life. But today I want to explore and maybe even challenge what a quiet life really means for us, because it's certainly not going to mean the same for all of us. So, of course, I'm going to be sharing some of what it means to me, and that may challenge some of us. I realize that, because I don't think a quiet life means a life not lived, a life of avoidance, or a boring life where nothing happens, where I get to the end with that well-preserved body. Certainly that's not how it is for me. And I'm rather hoping it's not that for you either, because otherwise we're potentially wasting this precious thing called life that we have. And depending on your beliefs, we may have one or more trips through this life, or a life, but let's not squander it. So the question I want you to be pondering as I'm sharing my thoughts are, what does a quiet life really mean to you? Here's some of what it means to me. It means having the self-awareness, the tools and the techniques to carve out the space I need to recharge in this increasingly noisy and fast-paced world. It doesn't mean becoming a hermit and opting out. And as far as I'm concerned, I have far too much to achieve for that to even be an option. In fact, just yesterday in my LinkedIn newsletter, The Flourishing Nudge, I talked about being recognized as a cage rattler. And I talked about that being probably the best moment of my career, being recognized as that. And being recognized as a cage rattler doesn't happen by opting out and playing small. Now, if you've chosen hermit, I salute you, and I recognize that that may be what's appealing to you either in life or right now for whatever reason. And it's also true that humans are social creatures. Yes, even we introverts. And this means that we do have a fundamental need to connect with others and build relationships. But of course, for us as introverts, it's those deep and meaningful relationships that we want. Doesn't have to be very many of them, but it's those that we crave, not the superficial ones. I imagine we're probably all aware of the research that's shown that social isolation and loneliness can have negative effects on our health, both physical and mental health. And importantly for us, social isolation has also been linked to increased risk of depression, anxiety, cognitive decline, and even mortality. How many introverts in those introvert groups talk about their depression, their anxiety? Maybe it's because they are too isolated and not connected to the right people. They don't have that support network so that they have those deep and meaningful conversations. So that's why it's so important that we build a really useful support network around us of people who understand us, who can be there for us. It's interesting, I've never felt lonely, even though I spent so many years traveling overseas on my own for work, because I always have real friends who I can pick up the phone to. Yes, I'm an introvert and I pick up the phone and make calls and I answer calls. with and to the right people. Or I jump on a video call, and yes, I have my camera on the video calls. Especially when I need to see somebody and I need somebody to see me. You know, we talk about being seen and the importance of being seen. And sometimes there's the paradox with introversion as well, in terms of people talking about wanting to be invisible. But again, it's part of the human health requirement that we are seen, that we are recognized. So I'll have my video camera on when I'm talking to the people who challenge me, who support me, who love me, because I want to be seen and I want them to see me and I want to see them. A quiet life for me also means I'm choosing to master the skills that enable me to ride the peaks and valleys. Just like learning to drive, you know, we're not born with those skills, although some youngsters seem to think they are. I don't think I ever felt like that. I remember my first driving lessons being quite scary affairs. But we learn those skills over time. And I still remember my instructor, when I passed my test, saying to me, right, now go out and learn how to drive. You've mastered the basics. Now go out and learn how to drive. And those skills we learn are tested at each emergency stop, each parallel park, each 3-point turn. We're mastering, refining those skills. You see, people who really want to drive apply themselves to learning the skill of driving. And some go even further by taking an advanced driving test or skid pan training. Fancied doing that as well, I have to say. And that kind of learning requires a growth mindset, because who's going to get that kind of stuff right first time, every time? Especially when we're straddling that competency zone and learning edge that I talked about a few shows back. You know, if I reflected back on my life and all the things that, however terrified I was, I've taken on and learned how to do. You know, if I'd given up on those things at the first sign of difficulty, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I'm not saying where I am is nirvana, is it? But actually, I'd be a long way further back from where I am now. So this proves to me that we have the focus and energy to learn and master the things that really interest us. So a great place to start, I always think, is, what do you want to do or be in life? What mark do you want to leave on the world? And please don't say, I don't want to leave a mark, or I don't want to, you know, achieve anything, because the world needs we introverts to take our place as inclusive leaders. I mean, let's face it, it's been mainly extroverts that have had their turn at leadership, and look where that has got us. So yes, there are some great introverted leaders out there, but we need more of us. I'll tell you what else a quiet life means to me. It means not perpetually dwelling in a state of inner turmoil, because that negatively impacts my well-being and my ability to show up in the world. And notice I very deliberately said perpetually dwelling, because being there from time to time is actually quite normal. Because for clarity, inner turmoil can be defined as a state of inner conflict or unrest that arises from the tension between our desires, our beliefs, and our values. And if there is tension there, then inner conflict exists. This inner conflict can manifest in different ways, such as feeling uncertain, feeling anxious, feeling frustrated or guilty. Certainly, I've experienced the lack of certainty, the frustration, when my desires are so strong and yet I didn't yet have the belief in me. My limiting beliefs were stronger than my empowering beliefs. So, interestingly, inner turmoil can also be seen as an opportunity for growth and self-discovery, which is why I don't necessarily want to be there perpetually, but I don't mind being there sometimes, because as you might imagine, that's the bit I'm really interested in. From a positive psychology perspective, inner turmoil is viewed as a natural and normal part of the human experience. It can serve as a catalyst for personal transformation and development. It means I'm questioning what's important to me and expanding my comfort zone by working at that learning edge more often. Because when I do that, my comfort zone grows. So rather than cut it off or deny that kind of growth and turmoil by exploring underlying causes, I suppose, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our motivations. And that process can cultivate greater resilience, compassion, wisdom, as well as enhance our sense of purpose and our meaning in life. And for me, over these past probably 3 years, really getting a deep sense of my true purpose that gives my life meaning is something that I'm always seeking to get better clarity on. But does that mean I'm always certain of where things are going in life? Absolutely not. And of course, that uncertainty is part of the peaks and the valleys, which is why I need to learn those riding skills, why I need to master those skills. Practicing so many of the things that I've mentioned in other shows here can help to reduce that turmoil, which then contributes to those riding skills. The first of which is to focus on what is in my control or influence and let go of the rest. You know, remember those spheres that Viktor Frankl talked about. And what he noticed is that people thrive when they work in those areas that they can control and influence where they can. But all the while we're devoting energy to stuff that's out there beyond our control or influence, it's kind of just wasting energy. So focus on what you can control, or what I can control and what I can influence. The second thing, and I've talked about this a few times as well, is to uphold my boundaries and say no without feeling guilt. As you know, I love Brené Brown's work on guilt and shame, and being able to communicate where my boundaries are is such an important thing to be able to do. That's where that Tony Gaskins quote comes in so useful, that we teach people how to treat us by what we allow, what we reinforce, and what we stop. That's what boundaries are about. Another thing that I do that helps me master or manage that inner turmoil and develop those riding skills is to go to my support network for a sanity check and for accountability. But you know what I also go to them for? I go to them for a shot of courage when the reactions from my cage rattling become extreme. You know, I'm prepared for people to be quite vicious in their reactions because in some cases I know they've been triggered. It's highly likely that I will be trolled from time to time about this. And yet that doesn't take me away from the importance of the work I know I'm doing. The next thing I need to do is balance thinking with action so that I don't lose myself in introspection. I'm an introvert after all. I get up into my head, and I'm also a reflective introvert. So in terms of my learning style, I'm much more likely to learn through that preferred starting point of reflection rather than doing. And sometimes my reflection takes so long that I miss the opportunity and I don't get into the doing part. So I need to make sure that that balance is there, that yes, I'm reflecting. Yes, I'm doing some self-observation, but then it's leading to purposeful action. And the other thing I need to do is to use techniques that get the issues out of my head and onto paper. You know, I can't manage everything that's going on in my head, but once I get it out on paper and I can look at it objectively, it makes it much more manageable. So whether this is a kind of pros and cons list or a needs and wants or a likes and dislikes, you know, it could be all sorts of things, a SWOT analysis, whatever. But I need to get the issue out of my head so that I can almost take a perceptual position and kind of look at it as a third party. And that brings me on to probably the biggest thing that a quiet life means to me, which is abstaining from unnecessary conflict. An unnecessary conflict with others, because this is something I see many others do, and sometimes almost for sport, but I derive no pleasure from it. But I would like to take a couple of moments just to explain what I mean by unnecessary conflict, because that implies there's such a thing as necessary conflict. You see, conflict itself is simply a difference of opinion or a clash between two or more parties who have opposing positions, needs, goals, or values. Something I face over and over again when rattling cages. It's necessary conflict. Because necessary conflict is deemed to be essential to the functioning of a relationship or an organization or a society. It's constructive conflict that arises from differences of opinion, different perspectives or goals, and serves as a catalyst for growth and change and innovation. Necessary conflict can result in improved communication, collaboration, and problem solving. And it encourages individuals to express their ideas and perspectives openly and find the common ground between them. And I have no problem with that. And the creativity that, in my experience, it often catalyzes is remarkable. Unnecessary conflict, on the other hand, is a type of conflict that is avoidable, unproductive, and destructive. It's often a point scoring game that has no long-term benefit other than to have one person feel superior or to have won in some way. It often arises from trivial or insignificant issues, misunderstandings, which is why communication is so important, or personal animosities. Unnecessary conflict can lead to negative consequences, such as reduced productivity, damaged relationships, and a toxic work environment. So the extroversion bias, for me, is part of this unnecessary conflict. So I'll work hard to avoid unnecessary conflict as well, because it's unnecessary and it's a waste of my precious energy. So for a quiet life, for me, is not playing small. It's not hiding inside my introversion or using my introversion as an excuse. It's living life on purpose with the necessary skills and techniques so that I can have a positive impact whilst minding my energy. And that's exactly what I'll be helping people to achieve on the 90-day Unfulfilled to Flourishing course that starts at the end of April. At the end of this, I'll pop the link up for the wait list, and soon there'll be a link on my website. I'm not shouting about it too much because it's for a select group of people. But if you want to learn how to ride the peaks and valleys, please do take a look. Now, if you do want to have a look, you can see the link there. It's a bit of a long one, but it's quiet.flourishingintroverts.com/U2F. And that will give you the information page so that, well, the register for information page. But what I'm seriously thinking about doing is making this a by application course only, because it's for a small group of people who really do want to make a difference. But also up there, you can see my website, flourishingintroverts.com, which is where you'll find a whole host of goodies. There's my free introvert quiz. There's my brilliant battery boosters, a number of other downloadable guides. And just below that is my email address, joanna@flourishingintroverts.com. And I would love for you to drop me an email to let me know in particular what lands for you from some of these shows, and to let me know what you perhaps would like me to talk about in the future. In the meantime, what I'd really love for you to be doing is thinking about what adventures you'll have in your life so that you can skid in broadside with that huge smile on your face, proclaiming, wow, what a ride. I will leave you with the words of Paulo Coelho, who said, if you think adventure is dangerous, try routine. It's lethal. Thank you for joining me.